Game of the Year Watch is presented by Xfinity. It's internet made for gaming. Level up with a smooth, low-lag connection with Xfinity.
What's up, everybody? I'm Damon Hadfield, and it is about that time of year again as we exit the first quarter of the year. It is time to begin our Game of the Year Watch 2024 edition. This is when we take stock of all the best games that have come out this year so far and debate which ones might be on the short list of Game of the Year nominees come the end of the year. So, here to join me for this discussion are Stella Chung from our gameplay team. This is the team that are spending the most time playing games all day long, from day to day, playing all the latest hits. Tom Marks is from our reviews team. He has a hand in just about every review that goes up on IGN.com. And Jada Griffin from our social team, who has her finger on the pulse of all the games our audience and our community are excited about. Yeah. So, it's been a great year for games already so far. Lots of great games. We've given out no 10 out of 10s yet so far. No 10 out of 10s for 2024 yet. We've given out an 8, 9 out of 10s, and a whole slew of 8s. I do think there's probably a couple games that are the clear front runners of the year so far, and I think our community agrees with me. We'll get to that in just a moment. We'll also be sharing our personal picks for our favorite games of the year so far a little bit later. But here are the 8 games that have gotten a 9 out of 10 from IGN so far this year. Balatro, Unicorn Overlord, Sons of the Forest, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Helldivers 2, Persona 3 Reload, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and Tekken 8. Some notable games that have gotten an 8 out of 10, certainly that doesn't preclude them from being nominated for Game of the Year by any means, but some notable 8s are Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. A lot of people were surprised by the quality of that one. Palworld, and then Dragon's Dogma 2 just got an 8 this week. That one may be a little bit too fresh for us to really dive into much this episode, so we can include that on the next episode a little bit farther down the line. So, all that said, I feel like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Helldivers 2 are kind of the clear front runners, and we have some data from our audience. We're running an ongoing face-off on IGN.com where everyone can vote for their favorite games of the year so far, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is currently winning that with Helldivers 2 right behind it, basically neck and neck. And then Jada, we also did a poll on our socials where it was reversed, right? Helldivers 2 came out on top.
Yeah, we did a kind of a bracket style kind of elimination for all 8 of the top 8 games, and Helldivers is beating out Final Fantasy Rebirth. Looking for the percentage, looks like it is up 55% to 45%. Wow. So very close.
Okay.
So what do you think? Do those feel like the 2 games that are sort of like in the lead at this point?
Yeah, in the larger sort of public eye, definitely. I think those are the 2 games that have dominated the conversation for the first 3 months of this year by far.
Very different games.
Yeah.
Sprawling single-player remake of a beloved JRPG, cooperative Starship Troopers style bug hunt shooter that's really, really resonated with people. How do we compare these, and is it possible to say that one is better than the other?
I would argue for Helldivers, and not just because I love first-person and third-person shooters, sure, but I think that it just comes at a time where a lot of people are very sick of the current live service, multiplayer shooters and multiplayer games currently, so it comes at a really good time. Also, its live service is not really live service, and it feels really good to play and invest your time in. Also, the way that it just brings the community together to make you feel like, oh yeah, we're conquering this one planet together, we're totally, like the little 1%, I'm helping 3% to help liberate this planet. There's this like mindset that makes you feel like you're actually doing something, so you're more inclined to play it more and more. And I don't know, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth I know is really good, but I feel like that has its focused audience, right? Helldivers 2, I feel like it's like $40, right? So a lot more people can access it. You don't have to have previous knowledge of the first game to play it. So I feel like it's a little bit more open to the public and casual players. So personally for me, I prefer Helldivers 2 over Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah, but to your point, Damon, it's also like they're so different gameplay-wise, but they're also so different sort of story-wise, and I mean like story outside of the game, right? Where it's like one is a sequel, the second part of a trilogy of a remake of a game from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, and the other one is a sequel, but it's sort of a reboot of a sequel. It's not really like, you don't need to have played Helldivers 1. You don't need to know anything about them. So it's also, they are so different. Like you're saying, it's basically across like every facet, they are different.
And then Jada, what's your take?
I'm really split on these. I've got about 150 hours in both of these games, and I love everything that Final Fantasy Rebirth is doing. The combat is some of the best combat we've ever gotten in an RPG. The storylines are fantastic. The performances from all the actors for every beloved character is just top marks from all of them. Not to be confused with Tom Marks, but in Helldivers though, its environmental storytelling is just fantastic. Like you see everybody online talking about this game, coming up with these stories like, look what happened in my game last night. This is ridiculous. Why? How? Why? And the devs are playing into it, and it's just a very strong community. So like I honestly, this could go either way. I think I'm leaning more towards Helldivers as well if I had to pick between those two. But spoiler, neither of those are at the top of my list right now.
We'll be anxious to see what is actually at the top of your list. Here's one thing: Helldivers 2 doesn't have Queen's Blood.
That it doesn't. It does not have Queen's Blood.
A little bit of an edge in my mind.
Is that an edge in the positive? It's better because it doesn't have Queen's Blood, or worse because it doesn't have Queen's Blood?
I think it's very much positive. I love Queen's Blood.
Yeah. Oh, I love Queen's Blood. That's what I'm saying. So you think that you have your chips are on Final Fantasy because it has Queen's Blood?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, but I feel like Helldivers 2 will continue to be relevant towards the end of the year, right? I mean, there's always going to be content coming out for that, whereas with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there might be a DLC, but there might not be. But with Helldivers, since it is a live service game, it is going to be constantly updated. So
I mean, they've been doing a good job about keeping the content. Yeah. It's just a matter of how long until that runs out. Like we've seen time and time with these live service games where it goes strong for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then it's like, where's the new stuff?
Yeah.
And that's at no fault to the developers. Games take time. It takes time to create new creative things that the players in the community are either asking for or don't know that they want, that is going to be hit in the community. So I hope Helldivers keeps it up because I love the game and I'm playing it every night basically. So I hope it keeps it up.
But there's also sort of a double-edged sword to that too, right? Because there's that Batman quote, right? Like, you die the hero, live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yep.
Final Fantasy is what it is right now, and we know what it is, and we've seen what it is. And if Helldivers drops the ball come mid-July or August, the conversation could turn on it, right? Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to. I wish it the best, but like, there is a weird thing of if it does go that way, then suddenly are we talking about it differently by the time we're voting for Game of the Year awards, or are we, like you said, keeping it in our head and it's more fresh than Final Fantasy? It's a good question.
Yeah. That's fair. I trust the developers with the amount of updates they've been doing. Again, like Jada said, it is really hard to keep that quality going forward, but I don't know. I trust them with the way that they've been keeping updates, and they've communicated really well about it. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, they've been very transparent about everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the long tail of Helldivers, that's a good segue into Palworld, which had a huge moment at launch, but I think arguably that moment has kind of passed. So, for example, just today, Helldivers 2 is still the number 4 game on Steam. Over the past 24 hours, it had a peak concurrence of 246,000 players, whereas Palworld isn't in the top 15 games. And let's see, it had peak concurrence over the last 24 hours of 45K.
Which is still huge.
It's still big, but nowhere near Helldivers. It just doesn't seem to have the staying power, because Palworld's only about a month older than Helldivers 2.
Yeah, well, that's the trick. Palworld is really interesting because it is this huge game this year. It's a huge story this year, but it is sort of the catch of early access, right? Is that at the end of the day, that game isn't finished. And it's incredibly well put together already for being early access and for where they've released it, and they've done a great job already with updates and patches and fixing bugs or that sort of thing. But it is sort of a step behind a full release of a game because it's got a lot to go, and they've been very transparent by saying this isn't done yet, right? And so I usually with early access games will try it at the beginning, see what it's like, and then say, you know what, I'm gonna wait till they're done with this and then come back to it. And probably whenever it hits 1.0, whether that's this year or probably later, then it'll have another huge surge at that time.
So you've spent a lot of time with Palworld, right?
Yeah, the very first day that I was playing it for guides, I put in 8 hours and I did not realize that I did not get up to eat. All I did was get up to get coffee, and it was really bad. But yeah, so I want to point out that since Palworld came out, we had lots of PvE survival games come out. So there was Enshrouded, there was Nightingale, there's another one that I can't name at the moment.
Pacific Drive came out, which was also survival-y, but not co-op.
Yeah, there's just a lot happening. Lightyear Frontier Frontier was out now. So
Sons
there's
of the Forest get its 1.0 release.
Yes, exactly. There's just so much in that category that it's definitely going to get bogged down. And I know they just added a new raid, but it's not enough to bring people back, because once you get into the gameplay loop and once you've done all of the different farming and you've got the base that you want, it's kind of hard to get back to want to maintain that.
Yeah, I think that as of recording this, if my math is right, I think we've reviewed 6 like third-person survival crafting adjacent games just in 2024. It's just a ton. Yeah. So you're right that there's been a lot right now for that genre.
Yeah, there's only so much that the cute little pals will take your game, right? Because the gameplay loop has to be fun. It has to be refreshing. You have to be constantly updating or improving it. And to be honest, I haven't really seen the developers posting too many updates recently, because I think players have been slowing down, which makes sense. So there's less of a rush. But there is not much content aside from the new raid that's coming out and probably some new bug fixes. But that's not enough for me to come back.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
Another game that really surprised people was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. And actually on the IGN, this ongoing face-off, it's number 3 for our audience's favorite game of the year. And this was a Metroidvania and Ubisoft's first ever Metroidvania, I believe. And they just nailed it. It's one of the best Metroidvanias I've played in a long time.
Yeah.
Very cool setting, a huge map. The map you just keep unlocking more and more of the map, and the game keeps on going, and it feels really, really good too. It has a lot of like sort of classic platforming in there. Jada, where does he sort of like? How are you feeling about
Prince of Persia? Prince of Persia is very high on my list this year. I love Prince of Persia. It's like combat. It's fluid. It's crunchy. Like it's on both ends of the spectrum. It feels so good when you pull off those perfect parries, especially in those big boss fights. It gets you that animation that plays. It's very satisfying. They also introduce a new feature into Prince of Persia, into the Metroidvania series, which needs to be copied by every other Metroidvania game, where basically you're able to take a picture of a spot of a room you're in. If there's like a treasure, like I don't know how to get this, or I don't have the ability to get this. And then anytime you can pull up your map, go to that little icon in that room, and you can see that treasure that you missed. It's a godsend for like just keeping track of things that you can't get in a Metroidvania.
Can I do a quick tangent?
Yes, please.
The first time I played Hollow Knight, I literally was screenshotting the map as I revealed it, and then stitching those screenshots together in Photoshop so that I could make my own little notes. And then after release, they added the pin system so that you kind of do that built in. But you're totally right that I think speaks to just how smart Metroidvania developers are getting, and that is, I think, a huge step forward for the genre of just saying, yeah, just take a photo. It's limited. You got to be careful about, like thoughtful about how you use it. But yeah, it's super smart, and everything. That game ticks just every box that I want from a Metroidvania. Like you're saying, the combat is good, but also the way the world is stitched together and the way it encourages you to go through it and move through it, and gives you fast travel, but not too much fast travel, and gives you reasons to go back to places. It's just really, really well put together.
So we've got a couple live service games in the running, and then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth isn't the only JRPG in the running. There's also Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth.
Yeah.
Also super well received. I know both Tom and Jada are big fans of that one, right?
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, the Like a Dragon series, I think, is in recent years getting more of its due that it deserves, it feels like to me. I don't know. That one, not that it flew under the radar because it's got a ton of fans, but like, I think people are, with the switch to turn-based, people have started looking at it more with like more open eyes, more open mind.
Yeah, it's always had like this, I don't want to say cult following, but it's had this following behind it, to where there's like people who are Yakuza fans and Like a Dragon fans now. They've been fans for a long time. I mean, the series was PS2 and it's still going with regular releases. And Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, after the swap to turn-based in the first Like a Dragon, which, kind of like, hey, this gives new fans a reason to look at this franchise, like a new reason to do this. And then they just built upon everything they did well in Like a Dragon and added that to Infinite Wealth, and it's all the better for it. I like to joke that with Final Fantasy Rebirth and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which came out basically back to back within a month of each other, that Final Fantasy Rebirth is like 75% serious, and it gets really goofy in 25% of the time with its mini games and side stories. Like a Dragon is like kind of the opposite, where it's 75% mini games, goofy all the time. But when it gets to those story moments for that 25%, it is so good. It is captivating. I'm enthralled. I'm like, I think I missed a line there. I need to hit record my PlayStation and go back and rewatch this cutscene because I need to see the context again.
Yeah, the story missions are. I mean, I think that's what's so fascinating and phenomenal about the series is that it can have that serious, really well told, really heartfelt, genuine story, and then at the same time, it has an entire Crazy Taxi knockoff mini game in it. It has an entire Pokemon Snap knockoff mini game in it. It has an entire Pokemon battling with a Pokemon League and gym leaders mini game in it. It has an entire Animal Crossing Island mini game in it that are all like, every one of those could be a full Steam game made by some indie developer, and they're just all crammed into this already very good RPG. It's wild. It's wild, the scope of it.
So with all of this, it seems like you would almost put this above Final Fantasy VII Rebirth then.
For me, yes. And I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, and I did not expect that going into 2024 that I was going to love Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth as much as I have. Final Fantasy Rebirth was like my front runner coming into this year. I was like, this is going to be my game of the year. I already know. And now, we're here talking about it. Helldivers is fighting for that position. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth has won my heart, though. I love everything about that game.
Yeah, I haven't played Rebirth yet, so I can't make that call, but I am loving Like a Dragon for sure.
What would you say is your top pick of the year so far, Tom?
I think I'm gonna have to play to my stereotype and say Prince of Persia right now. As weird as that might be, I know it's not one of those main two frontrunners, but really I am a huge platformer fan. I'm a huge Metroidvania fan, and this has just been, it was like you said, a very a surprise and a real gift this year to be able to play that.
Stella, how about you?
For the year so far,
yeah.
Helldivers 2. It's got to be Helldivers 2. I mean, it has brought together the gaming community in a way that I've never seen. And it definitely has my vote.
Mine is a game that I mentioned at the top of the show, but we haven't discussed yet. It's Unicorn Overlord.
Hey.
Heck yeah.
I love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's probably my number 2 pick right now. But Unicorn Overlord, I'm dreaming about it all day long when I'm not playing it. I'm well, it's 7:30, time to get in bed, kids, so I can get into some Unicorn Overlord. It's like a fantasy tactics strategy game from Vanillaware, from Dragon's Crown and what is the Aegis?
13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, Odin Sphere, a whole bunch of
the gameplay has Ogre Battle vibes, but mostly it's just beautiful, and I like to just look at it and just sort of live inside this beautiful fantasy world they made. It's super addictive, and even the battle is unassumingly interesting because once you're battling, you don't do anything. It's auto, so you can set everything up beforehand. You set up skills that you want your units to use, and you can set priorities for how they're going to go about doing them. So you have to think before you actually get into battle. Super fun, super satisfying. I'm really enjoying that one.
Yeah, it's got the combat it's very intricate, the setup. It's almost like Final Fantasy XII's Gambit system. So it's hey, prioritize this type of unit. Prioritize rows with the most enemies.
Yeah.
Heal if somebody's below 25% HP. And it's all about, it's like a battle of the minds. It's all about preparation and figuring out how to place these units properly, and then how to build a cohesive party, because you're building up up to 10 squads, I believe. And currently I have 4 members per squad. So I'm managing 40 characters and their placement in each squad, because that changes depending on who is where. And so it's just a whole lot of, I don't want to say micromanaging, but it is a lot of managing your party. And the better you set it up, the better your chances are. Yeah.
Micromanaging meant respectfully.
Yes, in the most positive way.
Yeah.
I've never enjoyed micromanaging a party as much as I have in Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah.
They had a demo out. It was 5 hours. I squeezed every second out of that demo. I would finish a fight, reload the save before the fight, and then do the fight faster because I knew how to get through it. Because it was that good. I was enjoying it that much.
Dedication.
Yeah.
Also great music in that one.
Yes.
I feel we should also mention a possible Dark Horse candidate in Balatro, speaking of indie games. Not everyone has played this yet. I know it's sold 1 million copies so far, but this is the roguelike poker game. And I think, Tom, you can confirm this, that if you do play it, it gets its hooks in you.
Oh yeah, yeah. It digs its way into under your skin very quickly. It's just there's something about it's it's gotten a lot of comparisons to like poker-ish Slay the Spire or that sort of thing. But one of the differences I think is that because it uses poker hands and the terminology and the symbology of poker, it's so much easier to just kind of understand right away what's going on and just lose yourself in. And the runs are a little bit snappier in that way, so you can just sort of keep going. Yeah. And when you beat in air quotes a run, it then just says, hey, you just want to play until you lose? And you're like, I guess I do. And so you just keep going. Yeah. And yeah, the way that game grabs you and then escalates where you think you're doing really well, and then the next run you're doing 10 times better than you were, and you're just like, wow, it's just amazing how it scales over time.
Yep.
I've never seen and this might just be me not playing enough roguelites, but I've never seen a roguelite like that where after you finish it, it's like, hey, go play in endless mode. Like you were saying, like that is a genius feature, because there's so many times where I'm playing like Hades and I'm like, this run is awesome. I'm built super great. I would love to just keep going. And it's just like, nope, start over. Which is fine. It works for the format, but I love that Balatro lets you just keep going. I think I've made it to ante 11 out of 8. Wow. And like the goal was like 7.2 million that you had to earn, and I had 6 hands.
Yeah, I think once you get up to like 11 or 12, it starts going into like the exponentials, yes, where the numbers you have to hit are just too long to even fit on the screen.
Yeah, 10. I think if I remember right, the final blind for 10 was like 1.2, and then it jumped to 7.2 at the first blind for 11. I was just like, how am I going to do this? I got to 3, but I was like, that was as good as I could do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Balatro will be one to watch as more and more people play it and fall under its spell as we move in through the year. That's going to about do it for this edition of Game of the Year Watch. We do want to know what your favorite games of the year are so far. Make sure to share them in the comments. You can still participate in this face-off that's ongoing on IGN.com. Make your voice heard, rock the vote, as they say. Thank you to Stella, Tom, and Jada. And thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. We'll see you next time on Game of the Year Watch.